Just a Concerned Citizen by Damos on AO3. Chapter 21 Dinner. Izuku hadn't put a lot of thought into what an actual relationship with Hitoshi would be like. He'd had his fantasies, sure, but he'd been fully prepared for real life to not live up to them. Truth was stranger than fiction, it seemed, because Izuku hadn't expected Hitoshi to be as domestic as he was. He still blushed when he thought about how excited Hisashi had been to give him a bouquet of flowers. Going on normal dates hadn't even really crossed his mind until Hitoshi had asked him on one, and it was easily the best one that Izuku had ever had. Apparently, Hitoshi had also been holding back on the physical side of things too. What was once the occasional brush of fingers became a full onslaught of hand-holding and cheek kisses, and having arms draped around his shoulders while he scrolled through case files. Not that Izuku minded at all. You know, he said wryly one night, one of the things we talked about at therapy recently was the possibility of me being touch-starved, but I think you might have it worse than me. You think so? His boyfriend has teased, one cheek resting on Izuku's shoulder, arms around his waist. How do we suppose we go about fixing that then? It turned out they both had the same kind of insecurity over the relationship. They both thought, wow, how can someone like that like me? Izuku thought it was ridiculous. Hitoshi probably thought it was ridiculous too. But they both agreed that it wasn't the worst problem in the world to have, as long as they communicated properly. And so the weeks stretched into months. The days of Izuku's license exam loomed closer, and Izuku continued training for it, happiest he's ever been. He wasn't without worries, of course. Contact with his mom had stopped to basically nothing, and he worried a lot about how much she must be worrying over him. To say nothing of the gut-wrenching anxiety he felt every time he thought about the exam itself. The day he finally felt like he actually stood a chance at passing was the day he managed to get the drop on Shoto. He was the highest-ranking pro that Izuku got the chance to spar against, and figuring out a way to beat him was constantly in the back of his mind. With most everyone else, there was something he could do to deal with their quirks, some weakness he could exploit. Shoto had weaknesses, but nothing Izuku could use without preparation in advance. But sometimes Hiro got to prepare in advance, and he wanted to give that a shot. All it really took was turning up the heat. Literally. Izuku showed up an hour earlier and cranked up the thermostat in the gym as high as it would go. The air was hot and dry, meaning Shoto couldn't make ice as quickly or large as he normally did, and he couldn't use his fire for too long without overheating and having to back off. Quirks were physical abilities, and people with quirks tended to way overdepend on them, even in situations where they were very taxing to use. It was almost scarily easy to exhaust Shoto and bait him into making a mistake. Not many people could say they would have thrown a, to be fair, very tired and dehydrated, Shoto Todoroki to the ground, but Izuku was now one of them. The hero had blinked at him and said, "Next time you figure out a glaring weakness of mine, would you mind sharing it with me?" If he stood a chance against the number 7, he stood a chance against other people who were trying to be heroes. Probably. Hopefully. He tried to keep that optimism up, because soon enough it was the week of the exam. His life would, maybe, change on Wednesday, but as was the pattern in his life, when things happened to him, they tended to happen all at the same time. As the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. On Sunday last night in the afternoon, his mom called for him in the first time in months. He watched it ring, frozen for several seconds before tentatively reaching out and answering. Hello? His voice came out higher than he wanted, and he heard the slight gasp on the other end of the line, like she hadn't been expecting him to pick up. Oof. Inko's voice wavered. Hi, how have you been? It took a stupid amount of effort to snap himself out of his frozen shock and say, Good. You? Across the room, Hitoshi's head popped up from behind the sofa, eyes narrowed in question and concern. "I've been all right," his mom replied, not sounding very sure of her answer. "I actually, I talked to the Bakugos today. You remember a little while when we talked about planning a dinner together?" Oh, God. His face pulled into a grimace, and his boyfriend started to sit up from his spot a little more urgently. When he didn't answer right away, his mom gave a nervous hum and said, I'm sure you're busy and all, but I just wanted to ask if you could come." As though his presence would somehow sweeten the deal, he locked eyes with Hitoshi, who appeared to be wondering rather seriously if there was an actual threat. Izuku took a moment to decide whether there was or not. He did not particularly want to see Katsuki, but he wasn't exactly afraid. Truth be told, he hadn't thought of him much at all since the confrontation at the hospital, and had kind of been hoping that relationship was over and done with. Apparently not. And while he could, maybe he should, say no, his mom was trying to reach out, and he didn't want to deny her the chance. Though that didn't mean he had to do it alone. He licked his lips. "I'll see if I could get some time to come, but, would it be okay if I brought a guest?" Izuku felt like he should be offended at how surprised she sounded, but this was also the first time he'd asked that question since elementary school. Even when he had tentative acquaintance, or even significant others, he never once introduced them to his mom. "Yeah," he said. "I want you to meet my boyfriend." Hitoshi, if it were possible, only looked more alarmed. He mouthed, "What?" And Izuku mouthed back, "Later." "Oh my, well, yeah, his feelings were, at least, a little hurt. I can't imagine Mitsuki would have a problem with it, and I'll certainly like to meet him. I'll let her know to make another plate. This is, if we can both do Wednesday, I mean." "Sure, why not at this point? I have a thing that day, but if we have dinner a little later, it should be fine." "Right, I'll let everyone know I'm looking forward to seeing you again." It had been a while. His mom maybe hadn't always supported him in the way he wanted, but for a long time she felt like the only person who really wanted him around. He swallowed around the lump in his throat. "You too." When he hung up the call, he slumped onto the counter. It was to the sound of Hitoshi saying, "What did you just sign us up for?" "Dinner with my mom and the Bakugos." He said it more to the counter than his boyfriend, but the man heard, if the abbreviated sound he made was any indication. He was as much of a fan as the idea as Izuku was. "I'm going," he continued. "You don't have to, but—" "The Bakugos. As in—" Izuku grunted in affirmation, and then there was a groan, and a hand rubbing circles on his back. "I'm going." On Monday, at 4 in the morning, right as he was considering finishing up work, he got a text from Hitoshi telling him to close shithead in his room. 20 minutes later, his boyfriend arrived at the apartment with a box of meowing kittens and an apologetic smile. "I'm actually surprised this didn't happen sooner," he said. "Sorry, it's kind of a bad habit of mine." Izuku let himself get roped into cleaning and feeding them, and while Hitoshi assured him that he had a good relationship with a nearby shelter, he could find them homes. He also kept shooting Izuku conspiratorial glances before finally saying, "You could keep one, you know, just a thought." He picked the tiny calico and named her Ragdoll, which Hitoshi approved of immensely. On Tuesday, at 3 in the afternoon, the agency sent him an urgent case about a missing child. He worked on it for 13 hours straight, until it was solved, falling asleep at his desk once he got confirmation that the kid was okay. He wasn't sure how long he slept for, but when Hitoshi gently shook him awake, it was still dark outside. "Heard about the case," he said with a soft smile, voice already above a whisper. "Good work. You hungry?" Izuku was, desperately so, and when he nodded, his boyfriend pushed him to the couch, where a spread of what was possibly the most carb-heavy takeout order he'd ever seen in his whole life waited for him on the coffee table. Izuku ate his fill, nearly falling asleep, face first into his noodles, more than once. When he finished, he dropped the takeout container back on the coffee table and slumped onto Hitoshi, who responded with a surprised grunt. How? He said, wrapping an arm around Izuku and pulling him into a more comfortable position. Am I supposed to be the big spoon to someone who could probably bench press me? Izuku snorted. He put on some muscle, sure, but nothing that extreme. Get taller. His boyfriend sighed. Platform boots it is. He was content to laying there and drifting off, long fingers absently brushing through his hair. You nervous? Hitoshi's chest rumbled beneath him, snapping him out of his gaze, and Izuku heaved aside. No, I think I got so nervous that it looped back around and I'm fine. He twisted and propped his chin on Hitoshi's chest so he could see him better. Any irritation he had dissolved into the face of the hopeless, fond look he got back. Yeah, I'm nervous. Of course I am. He let his eyes fall close again, burying his face in fabric. Actually, Hitoshi was still in his hero uniform, so it was pretty uncomfortable. Though he still blushed, just a little. Are you gonna be watching? I might be. Which answer will freak you out more? So the answer is yes, but you'll tell me no just to make me feel better? No comment. After a long moment of silence, Hitoshi shifted beneath him. Come on, he said. You gotta be well rested for later, yeah? When Izuku made no move to get up, Hitoshi simply scooped him up into a bridal carry, though not without a grunt of effort. He was deposited in Hitoshi's bed, which had slowly become more common than not. There came a certain point where Izuku wondered if it was worth buying an expensive mattress after all, because, really, if they were going to share the bed so often, it would make more sense to turn his room into an office or something, wouldn't it? In 8 hours or so, he would have the chance to pull himself even closer to the life he'd always dreamed. For now, he'd appreciate the good he already had. In hindsight, they should have met Inko before they arrived at Bakugo's house. Mitsuki Bakugo was the one to greet them at the door, meeting Izuku with an enthusiastic hug, and Hitoshi with narrowed eyes and are you the boyfriend? From somewhere inside came a choked, boyfriend? The fuck? Which meant that Katsuki had beaten them there. Hitoshi's mouth thinned in a line, but he offered his hand and said, That's me, Hitoshi Shinsou. Oh, Mitsuki said, Your eye bags. She shook his hand in what Izuku suspected was a crushing grip. Nice to finally meet you. Izuku suppressed a wince. This was probably going to be a long shovel talk for Hitoshi, now that he thought about it. He probably won some bonus points by holding her gaze, though. When they entered the kitchen, they were met by 3 sets of eyes. Masaru gave a gentle smile and a wave before turning back to whatever he was cooking. Katsuki's eyes flicked back and forth between Izuku and Hitoshi, and Izuku almost could have laughed at the confusion that loomed across his face. He was still calculating for the moment, giving them a precious minute where he wasn't yelling or cursing up a storm. The other pair of eyes were Inko's, and they were wide and fixed on Izuku. He stirred back, not really sure what he should be feeling. Inko burst into tears. To be fair, Izuku should have been expecting it. He certainly should have warned Hitoshi about it, because he turned to look at Izuku very lost. I'll talk to her, he said softly. Hitoshi nodded, while the whole scene was barely acknowledged by the Bakugos, simply because they were so used to it. He gently took his mother by the hand and led her to the back porch, trying his hardest to make sure he didn't start crying himself. He had expectations for how this would go. She would cry, hug him, maybe try and convince him that what he wanted was too dangerous. She did the first 2, though not for as long as Izuku thought she might, and when she pulled away, she reached to cup his face with one hand, eyes searching his. Unsure what to do, he stared back, and saw was privy to the exact moment her expression clarified and pulled into a mournful smile. No, he had a lot of thoughts for how this was gonna go, but his mom saying, Izuku, I'm so sorry, was not one of them. For for what? He asked, throat suddenly tight. Inko sniffled and wiped at her eyes again. I, I always knew what you really wanted. Really wanted. I was always so worried that you would get hurt, but then you were hurting, and I. Another wave of tears trailed down her cheeks, but Inko paid them no mind. You're right. You look the happiest you've ever been, and I'm your mother. So I'm going to worry about you no matter what, so. Her voice wavered, and she was visibly swallowed. So I'm going to worry about you anyways, but you should at least be happy. I'm glad that you are. I'm so proud of you. At that, Izuku couldn't stop himself from bursting into tears, pulling his mom into a tight hug that felt long overdue. He didn't mind it so much when she said she was sorry this time. By the time they pulled apart, the night air had cooled to something actually comfortable, and they both shivered as they stepped inside. Hitoshi and Katsuki appeared to be having a competition for who could send the other the meanest glare, while Mitsuki was dolefully ignoring the tension. She smiled sharply at the two, who came back into the room. Just in time, dinner is served. Usual, as these events, Izuku was forced to sit next to Katsuki. He didn't bother hide his sigh of relief when Hitoshi very pointedly took the spot between them. Rice and curry were spooned into bowls, and Izuku could smell the spice from across the table. He had forgotten to warn Hitoshi about that, too. He really owed his boyfriend big time. There was a long moment where the only sound was the clinking of dishes, but before too long, apparently unable to take the silence, Mitsuki burstled forth with, Inko tells me you have a new job. What you been up to, Izuku? Izuku's smile was only small because of his nerves. He was actually stupidly, amazingly proud of what he was doing, especially now. Well, I was doing analysis for a bit there. I'll probably keep doing it on the side, but as of today, he reached for his pocket, where a thin piece of plastic had been sitting heavily for a few hours now, and pulled it out to show everyone. A provisional license, issued to new pro hero, Deku. It still didn't feel real, and he was looking at it, holding it in his hands. There was a part of him that was actually quite anxious that it had been a mistake, because the test had felt far too easy. There were so few adult applications that there wasn't a portion where the applicants would had to be narrowed down. There was simply a written exam, which, despite his worry, Izuku felt confident he'd done okay on, and a combined test for rescue and villain apprehension. For all he trained, Izuku hadn't even had to really fight. He surprised one foe villain and captured them before they could be won, but he spent most of the rest of the time directing others on how to best use their quirks for rescue. Apparently that showed good leadership abilities. Who knew? The first reaction was a wordless noise of surprise from his mother. Then Mitsuki leaned forward to clap him on the shoulder, prompting a surprised jump from Hitoshi, who seemed like he was very much on edge. Congrats, kid. I knew you could do it. Well, that certainly wasn't true, but Izuku bit his tongue and nodded his thanks. Inko and Masu congratulations followed a moment later, while Katsuki just frowned. He actually didn't look any angrier than usual, much to Izuku's surprise. He just glanced at the license and backed down to his food, jaw tight. Izuku was more than fine to leave it at that. But Mitsuki, evidently, was not, and turned to dig a pointed elbow into her son's side. Come on, don't be a damn grouch. This is the shit you've wanted since you were kids. Katsuki grumbled something that sounded like hag, but his shoulders slumped. He didn't look up from his curry, so Katsuki didn't see the way both Izuku and Hitoshi's eyebrows shot up when he murmured, You were better than most of the other half-wits taking the exam, I guess. Still shit, though. Izuku stared at his lowered head with wide eyes. Not only was that dangerously close to a compliment, but were you watching the exam? Hitoshi jumped in before Izuku could. I didn't see you there. Katsuki's head snapped up, his usual rage, flaring back up. So what if I was, huh? It's normal to go to these things and try to recruit new sidekicks. It most certainly was not. Most of the people who took the exam Izuku had just taken already had agencies lined up. Hitoshi knew that too, and Izuku reached under the table to squeeze his hand to try to make sure he wouldn't say so, because doing so would most certainly start a fight. Hitoshi's expression was one of barely concealed amusement, but he squeezed Izuku's hand back and simply said, "If you say so." Katsuki scowled and looked between the two of them for a long moment, before finally raising a hand to point right at Izuku's eyes, intended with some unreadable emotion. Izuku's breath caught in his throat, despite himself. I don't get to rub how much better I am than you in your face if you go dying on me, so don't. That was probably as close as an acceptance from him as Izuku was ever going to get. He could take that. I don't plan on it. And it was honestly more true than it had been for a long time. Provisional heroes didn't get HeroNet email's address. They were still in school, but those that worked directly under agencies did. There were a few days of delay, but when he got the notification that he was ready, Izuku smiled and copied a message he had already had waiting. From Concerned Citizen 81904 at gpmail.com to Antivoice at hero.net, battle.fish at hero.net, can't stop twinkling at hero.net, and 36 others. Subject: New contact. It has been a while since I've messaged most of you, but this is with good news. I'm doing this in an official capacity now. If you get an email from Deku at hero.net, that's me. Feel free to get in contact if you need any help. Okay, there's some things I want to talk about. I will get to the first one that I want to talk about at the end. But, okay. Affection Hitoshi. Yeah, I see it. I see Hitoshi and Shota as, like, cats. Like, at first, they're kind of skittish, and they're like, go the fuck away. But then, like, the second you earn their trust, they're affectionate as fuck. But then, like, out of nowhere, they're just like, nope, no more affection. Get the fuck away from me. Nope. No. I'm like that. Like, at one moment, I want your affection. I want your attention. I want, like, give me. Then the next moment, okay, leave me the fuck alone. I'm gonna lay down and sleep. So, fuck off. Or, like, leave me the fuck alone. I'm gonna go lay down and read fanfictions, which is the equivalent of a cat laying in the sun and sunbathing. Okay? So, like, fuck off. Right? I also really love that that Inko came around and is supportive now of Izuku. I love that. I love that we got that wraparound. Little wraparound. Also, Bakugo watched. I kind of forgot about that. Because this is my, second time reading this. I kind of forgot about that. Low-key forgot about that. Just a little bit. Just a tad bit. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. Nope. We're going to ignore the fact that we're going to ignore it. Ignore. No, ignore it. No. You guys, no. Get out of the fucking comment section. Fucking ignore it. Oh, sorry. My Bakugo came out of there. Okay, I'm trying to buy time because I'm trying to find the next one that's gonna... What is this the next one that's gonna go over this one? Okay, Monday. We'd have to record tomorrow. Oh, future. All right. I know which one. I had to look at my calendar. We're not gonna talk about that. But, yeah, I find it very interesting that Bakugo, watched and is kind of supportive, but in his weird Bakugo ways. I very much love that. Bakugo being emotionally constipated. We love it. Snaps. The last thing I want to talk about is this chapter mentions, like how heroes often, and just like people often rely on their quirks a little too much. And it's something that I actually really, really enjoy when it's touched upon in fanfictions. It's something that I'm definitely going to touch upon a lot, especially in the Streamerverse. In an upcoming streams, there's going to be a mention of it. But yeah. Or at least I plan for there to be a mention of it. So, let's see. this is... I'm gonna tell you guys the next one that's gonna come up. So it is a crossover between the Umbrella Academy and My Hero Academia. So here is, it's a Gen 5th. I think the only ship that's present is Eraser Mike. Yeah, Eraser Mike is the only ship that's present. Give me a second. Someone came in my door, but I'm back. Alright, so, it's the only one that's, like, you know, a ship. Otherwise, it's, Dadzawa, but not with Izuku Midoriya. No, but with number 5. Alright? I haven't even finished season 2 of the Umbrella Academy because I was watching it with a certain someone, and, let's just say we're not friends anymore, and so I have just not gotten to it because I'm scared, and it reminds me of them, and no thank you. So these are some of the tags. Crossover, Canon-Typical violence for My Hero Academia. Parental Yamada Hisashi, Parental Shoda Aizawa, Alternate Universe Canon-Divergent, Hard of Hearing Yamada Hisashi, Manipulative Nezu, oh no, Implied/reference child abuse, Child soldier, past child abuse. The commission, TUA, does not exist. Queer platonic, oh no wait, it's clear platonic. Aizawa, Shoda, and Yamada Hisashi. Those are the tags, and here is the summary. It's called An Unexpected Future by, I'm gonna have to pronounce that, A-Series. 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 Summary. What? Who's saying that? Oh, Nezu. I'm sure you're looking forward to finding a way back to your own time as soon as possible, Nezu said. I want you to know that UA will do everything in its power to help you achieve that goal. Time travel is a complicated equation to solve, but I'm sure if we put our heads together, we'll come up with something. 5 raised a skeptical brow. And you're just going to do that out of the goodness of your heart? I'm not even old enough for high school yet. Well, we're all heroes for a reason, no? What good are we if we can't help a single child in need? Nezu pointed out with a pleasant, neutral smile as he sipped his tea. Or, instead of time traveling into the apocalypse, 15-year-old 5 Hardgreaves teleports in the middle of the USJ fight. He gets a couple of new dads out of it. I got this one recommended to me. Gonna do it, and I know a certain person was like super excited, and they're like, I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna tune into that one, and now we're not friends anymore, so that's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be tad awkward. Also, I'm not very big in the Umbrella Academy, what's it called, fandom. As I said, I haven't even finished season 2. I finished all of season 1. I haven't finished season 2. So, those who are big fans, hi. I'm not. But, yeah. Okay, as always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Links to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.